Hey man,
Hey, what's happening?
not much. Just reading the Andrew Roberts Churchill book.
Oh, okay. Someone's been telling me about that. I was just on the phone with Ethelstan briefly,
Oh
um,
yeah.
and yeah, I think he told me about this. No. He told me about a Churchill biography, like a documentary by David Starkey.
Oh really?
Yeah, he said that was
Oh,
very good.
see that? I've never heard of that actually. I didn't
Yeah,
realize Starkey. I love Starkey.
yeah, me too, me too. There's something about him that's cool.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah, man. So what's been going on these past few these past few days for you? I know you said you took a break from Twitter. That was probably a good idea.
Yeah, well, you asked me actually, have I did I go down there at the weekend? I actually went down on the Friday night, the
Mm.
day before the protests, just to check out like what it was looking like, and the whole place was like on lockdown. Um, and apparently there'd been some preliminary BLM march because they cancelled on the Saturday officially.
Mm.
Um, and it was kind of weird and creepy. So I took a walk around there, saw all the boarded up monuments, which is just depressing. Um, but then over the weekend, I haven't really. I just kind of I finished work and then I've just been kind of I'm working on an essay for my course, so I've just been kind of focusing on that and decided I really needed to take because I was really feeling like it was the end of civilization
Yeah,
last week. I
yeah,
mean, it was really getting to me. It was like, and it was just like what we were talking about that capitulation, that mental surrender, as Hitch would say.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
surrender in the mind. That is just like it was leaving me with despair. So I just thought I need to pull back from this because it's no fun.
yeah, yeah. That's right. Well, that I I've been trying to talk various people down off the ledge as far as in my circle as far as people despairing.
Mm,
I think because so on the one hand, you don't want to be a kind of a Pollyanna. You don't want to be
sure.
you want to kind of take a realistic view, but on the other hand, it's also true that it, the, we know that the enemy would love us to despair.
Yes. Yes.
That's the
Yeah, good point.
and I really, really do think that so much of the stuff, so much of the stuff you see on television or even online from the mainstream outlets, um, on really, and even from mainstream outlets on the right and left. Of course, there are fewer mainstream outlets on the right, but even those, there's a kind of a there's a kind of a gleeful despair.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? That comes from
Yeah.
the right on this kind of stuff, and I don't like that either.
Oh yeah. Fox News is full of that shit.
Full of that
Actually.
shit exactly. And I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, yes, I am conservative. I'm a
Mm,
foundationist, but I'm also an engineer. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I solve problems for a living. I make
right.
things for a living. It's like and just constitutionally, like my father's a carpenter and my mom was a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like
Both problem solvers. Yeah.
problem solvers, right? So I'm not trying to hear any of that shit. It's like when I'll concede. Actually, no, fuck that. I'm not going to concede ever. Like,
Yeah.
it's like when I'm dead, then I can be said to have conceded. But it's like until then, it's like I'm going to fight. And look, maybe fighting just means putting a good face on things. And what can I do today? Can I make a couple of phone calls today? Is so
Yeah.
and so feeling down today? Let me go call him and see what his ass is doing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe it's getting on and like writing an essay. Like you seem to do this when I call you. Sometimes you're like, I was just trying to write something, trying to get my
Yeah.
thoughts down or whatever. That's good, man. That's good. And sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to build something. Like, so my thing, well, I'm always talking about this. I'm always talking about how conservatives have to take back these online platforms. When I say take back, I mean build their own.
Right.
So I just spent the last few days spinning up some new infrastructure, like a new chat, basically a new private chat room service. It's like Telegram. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a different piece of software than Telegram, and it's open source, so you can install it and run it. So I just got that installed. I'm looking at it right now on my desktop. So I'm going to start sending around some invites, get people in there to play around with it, poke at it,
Yeah.
stress test it, see if it works for us. If it doesn't, I'll deinstall that and install something else, and we'll try that. But it's like, I want to have a thing where, I can have basically a closed circuit system that's like Telegram, or like a Facebook on steroids, and then I want to get someone else up with their instance of that service, and then I want to be able, how can we share how can we share messages between us, and then how can we automatically post from our service to Twitter, how can we automatically post from our service to Facebook, so people who are still on the mainstream services, they can still keep in touch with their users, what have you. But I'm just, I want to start putting options in front of people. Right.
Yeah, but you're in charge of.
But you're in charge, right?
You're
exactly.
not. This is it. Yeah, this is why I came off. It's not that I don't want to use service. But I watch YouTube videos through other websites or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like you can't just hand over your agency to these organizations anymore.
No, it's not good enough. I think. Listen, I think the proper role for Twitter is it is a you could look at it as a semi-public advertising platform.
Right.
That is to say, my quote unquote followers on Twitter are people who have signed up to see my advertisements. And my advertisements, I'm advertising what I'm doing or what's on my mind. That's all,
Yeah.
And it's like, so if I look at it like that, then it's like, well, it's like any other advertising platform. Like I'm using that platform, and if I use a different one, I use a different one. But in terms of my quote unquote friend, the people who I like to talk to, or people who are interested in ideas, well, that doesn't have to be Twitter's property. That can be my thing. It's like, what is the correct scale for a conversation in your living room, or a conversation on your front porch, a conversation, in the town square? It's like, we don't have to have 1 million followers. We don't have to have 100,000 followers. What does that even mean? That's advertising scale. That's not human scale. That's not political scale. That's advertising scale. So that's all. It's like, and we don't have to despair because Twitter has decided that they want to censor people who think that men can't be women. To hell with them. It's like,
no, good point.
Yeah. So that's what I've been working on. But again, the heaviest lift for me has definitely been the people lift, just trying to get these conservatives to stop despairing, to stop reveling in the idea that it's all over and they're coming for us. Dude, they're not, it's like they're not 10 feet tall. They're mostly, right? I mean, you see these riots. What's going on there, man? It's like it's a bunch of crusties,
Yeah, crusties and schemies coming together. That's literally what it is.
That's exactly.
A bunch of fucking crusties who don't have raves to go to, and a bunch of schemies who don't have their fucking McJobs to go to.
Exactly. That's what this is, man. And it's like, and the problem is, as I was pointing out to someone, this conservative friend of mine, and she was kind of despairing and all that. I said, listen, this isn't a defeat on the part of the forces of order and civilization. It's a retreat, which is not the same thing at all. Because it's an unforced retreat. That's the thing about it. Yes. Right?
Yeah.
It's one thing if you go face these guys and you get your ass kicked and then you have to back away. But that's not what's happening at all. What's happening is they've just decided, we're going to pull back. We're not going to really. I mean, look, in the U.S., we got this thing called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. This is in Seattle, right?
Oh my God, that's just
Jesus. I mean, it's funny, but it isn't funny, right?
Yeah.
You got 6 square blocks of a major American city, and the police simply withdrew from the precinct and boarded it up and left it, and these people pretty much put up barricades and whatever. And it's like, oh, this is ours now. This is our zone now. And now you could maybe, to be as fair as possible to the Seattle police, you could say that, okay, they didn't want to, they wanted to de-escalate in that moment, so they just withdrew from that precinct. But then why is the city shipping water and food and porta potties into them?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In other words, if you want to be an autonomous zone, okay, be an autonomous zone. Wonderful. You're autonomous now.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, that just says it all to me. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
couple of things there that what we were talking about before, that surrender of the mind where, here's the thing, it's analogous with what happened in Whitehall last week with the riots, Westminster and everything. Like you, the initial reaction is, well, maybe they just wanted to de-escalate. But actually, there's evidence of surrender there. In a piece, the PC rot has taken. They actually believe they're doing the right thing by sending in water bottles and taking the cops out. Right, and that's really worrying. Like, that they actually think they're doing something moral by helping these people.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. And and what it means is that, again, they have forgotten what they're there for, what they are, and why they're there.
Yeah.
But again, we shouldn't. This is another thing where this is another case, right, where we shouldn't be that surprised that the police have forgotten what they are and why they are, because after all, we've forgotten it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. As a society in general, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So we have to. So again, what can we do? Well, we can start talking about it. That's the first thing. We can start talking about it. We can start saying, hey, you know something? This is what the police are for. We can say it. It's like we should never. I feel like, why are we so one little crisis, and already we've forgotten how powerful it is to just say the truth.
Yes.
All these people, all these conservatives who are pointing out correctly, by the way, to the rioters, that this kind of resentment-based, I don't want to call it politics because it's not really politics, but resentment-based activism, was not the point of the civil rights movement. Well, one thing that was, but then they turn around and they forget that one thing that was very important about the civil rights movement was that they never forgot how important it was, how valuable it was, not in an abstract way, but in a concrete way, how valuable it was to simply speak the truth openly. I hate the term "speak truth to power." I think that's kind of dumb, but because after all, if you walked up to Henry Kissinger and said, "Hey, man, you're a war criminal," he'd say, "Yeah, go away, kid." So what is speaking the truth to power? Who cares? But speaking the truth is good in itself. Because why? Because especially now with the platforms we have, with the internet, with the ability to reach out to so many people, it's like we talked about this last time. On the one hand, we have a media establishment that wants people of sense to think, and people of decency to think that they're isolated.
Yes.
And on the other hand, we have people like, for example, my man James Dellingpole, who has 60-something thousand followers on Twitter.
Right.
So, like, that's 60,000 people who you can just talk to and be like, listen, man, you're actually not alone.
Yes.
You're not. That's all. Now. And I think that's good. Is that by itself enough? Well, no. But since when does any one thing by itself have to be enough? Are we in a war or not?
Yeah.
So if we are, then let's fucking get it together and start to fight. That's why I was so heartened by these by the football hooligans. And listen, Katz is trying to tell me, Katz is crying now and want to tell me all kinds of shit. Oh, well, these people were racist. I don't care.
Yeah. No, you don't understand. You don't understand. These are like, No, I do understand actually.
Actually, but it's so funny, right? Because it really showed. Well, so you were there for that little argument I had on my Twitter feed, right?
Yeah.
So
with the BLM
BLM guys, right? Well, so here's the one funny thing is that the BLM people, the one BLM guy who had the actual BLM based the Hertfordshire BLM Twitter ID, he never got back in touch with me. I mean, I said, listen, I appreciate you speaking to me. I appreciate you being respectful. I don't agree with the organization, but I'll try to be fair to you. Come talk to me. You seem like you haven't shown me anything that constitutes evidence that this was what you say it is, but maybe I'm missing something. Come talk to me on my podcast, and I promise to be fair to you. I'll ask you tough questions, but I will be fair, because I think it's especially important to be fair, given that given that I am biased in the first place, right? So come on, it's an open invitation. Never heard from the guy, right?
Well, yeah.
I mean, so what, so, but yeah, it's like you're telling me, and I realize that so much of this is the telephone effect. Like one of them will post a thing that says, look at this video of, townies in Hoddesdon shouting racial slurs. Now, people will not look at the video. What they'll do is they'll pass the video on to 10 other people.
Yeah.
And before you know it, 3 hops later, there's like a couple of thousand people talking about how there were all these racial slurs. Now, here's the thing. I watched every single video that he sent me.
Yeah.
I didn't see any Nazi salutes. I didn't. I'm sorry. It's like, I'm a black guy. I have no, and I'm not, again, it's like I'm anonymous. I'm not some personality where I'm invested in some kind of like standard conservative line, the way Piers Morgan is invested in being like a sissy. It's like I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And no, I didn't see any Nazi salutes. And then when I ask him, say, oh, well, there was some other footage. Well, show me the other footage. It's like, we can't because all that footage was handed into the police. What do you mean handed into the police? You took it on your phone. Did you give them your phone? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Right? Everyone there had a phone. Everyone had a smartphone, right? So now you're telling me that you were here at a protest, at a Black Lives Matter thing. The townies came out. They were screaming racial insults. They were doing Nazi salutes and all this stuff. You filmed it on your phone, right? Everyone took video. Some people took pictures, whatever. You filmed all these things. And none of that is available.
Yeah.
And because you gave because you uploaded it to a police, so you made a copy and gave it to. So why can't you show the copy? Well, because the police say that you shouldn't post things on the internet if you've also sent it to the police as evidence. Huh? Yeah,
it doesn't. I mean, why would there be all sorts of other videos then?
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, so y'all are lying, man. It's like, and again, even if there were people doing Nazi salutes, that's unfortunate. That's their stupid problem. Like, I'm sorry that you were a punk, that you feel like doing a Nazi salute makes you something other than a fucking dumbass. But that's irrelevant. The fact is that, like, Black Lives Matter is not to be allowed to destroy people's monuments anywhere, ever.
Well, but this is exactly the thing that gets lost is that, right. And I think a lot of conservative voices have been saying that, but it still doesn't make it okay, even if Churchill was a racist.
But let's assume he was a racist. He was a racist. I don't care.
He was a racist in the sense that he believed that there was a supremacy of the British Empire and he believed it had a right to rule the world. Okay. But he wasn't a programmatic Jim Crow type racist. It wasn't like...
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Difference. It's not that it's not a moral difference in the sense that they're both bad, but when you just brandy words like white supremacy, right? Like, the thing about Churchill is that he had a prejudice towards his own country, but he was often persuadable. You know what I mean? Like, he would often like change his mind on things. He would often be like, he changed his mind on Gandhi eventually. He grew to admire Gandhi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once he knew India was gone, he kind of said, yeah, well, they both admired each other.
Right.
Hated each other. But so, like, he was not one, exactly. And like, it doesn't take away his achievements. His achievements were humanitarian when push came to shove. So any other shit,
right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from that.
Right.
This idea that I don't know. I'm trying to work it out. I think that it comes down to teaching only Hitler in Vietnam in school.
That's funny. Yeah.
These clear kind of moral right.
Yeah.
Everything gets interpreted. Few moments in history are actually like that, and in fact, those even events that are being talked about were not like that. When you look at the First World War, we weren't fucking saints. So nobody's saying that. It's just that's not what heroizing is about. It's not a moral thing. Actually, Well, it's a moral thing, but more in the existentialist sense of morals. It's more like the formation of character and virtue rather than, Jesus Christ kind of morality. If that, it's like, it's more like what are the foundations of a moral character? That's what you look for in a hero.
I think that's right. Well, in other words, like someone who shows the tribe an image of itself that it can orient itself toward, right?
Exactly. Right.
And that's important. Now here's I'd only push back in this sense that I think that even look, the people who are saying that Churchill, I disapprove of even getting into the conversation of whether or not Churchill was a racist or how he was a racist.
Yeah.
Because again, I've read The River War, and it's like he uses racist language in there. He didn't necessarily feel. In other words, he didn't. Look, did Winston Churchill think that a black person was the equal of a white person, all other things being equal? Probably not. And my contention as a black person is that I don't care. Is that's right. Irrelevant. Hands off the fucking statue. Why? Because no one must be allowed to run around and toss things into a memory hole. That's not how it has to be done. It cannot be allowed to be done ever.
Because that's great. That isn't a small thing, and I think that a lot of this is the Philistine age we're living in. The sort of media types don't get that's a grave sin.
Correct.
That's a grave sin, because that's playing God, right? It's a kind of playing God where you get to morally just like decide you can cancel out bits of history.
Look, exactly. And even you have people, I mean, I saw a clip where a couple guys were talking about some Cecil Rhodes statue they wanted to take down, and like they asked, well, who was God didn't even know who Cecil Rhodes was.
Right.
Okay.
I think I saw that video. It's like, be honest, me, I don't even know. It's like, well, fuck off.
Well, then exactly. So my thing is, we know why this is happening. This is really, people, for whatever reason, the fact is that what they want to do is they want to unmoor this. They want to cut this society off from itself.
Exactly.
And that now it's taking the form of knocking down statues and what have you. It's taking the form of people saying we want to decolonize this curriculum. That's the other thing that I don't approve of at all. It's like, look, are black authors, for example, quote unquote, underrepresented in certain parts of the Western canon? Probably. Don't care. Yeah. Don't care. The answer is no. And that's what I was talking to. Who was I talking? I was talking to Sir Dan of C. Mm-hmm. And we were saying the same thing. I said, listen, the whole thing of saying so-and-so was a racist, I think is really a trap. It's really an attempt to get you into the trap of opposites, or into the fallacy of opposites.
Yeah, and on the defensive.
On the defensive, and really pushing and pulling. This is the thing. As I've talked to you about this and thought about it myself and kind of written about it a little bit, it's becoming clearer to me that this too is an echo of the Cold War, right? And we talked about this last time. Like, yeah, this kind of, it's almost like this Manichaean view of the universe. It's like, light and dark, good and bad,
Yeah.
And so you have to take the opposite side. So it's like the left is going to go and take a side, and now the right is going to dutifully go and take this opposite side. That's not necessarily right. It's just opposing them, because the fact is, like, there's a million different ways in which you can be wrong. So there's a million different ways in which you can oppose someone who's wrong and also be wrong, right?
Yes.
So I feel like, this statue should come down because so-and-so was a racist. And so your natural impulse is to say, well, so-and-so was not a racist. Well, now you're in that trap. Because then now you get caught up in this whole discussion, and now, well, let's actually go and look at his things, and let's go and read some of his quotations from the River War and da 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 da. That's a bad road to go down. This statue should come down because so and so was a racist. It's like, you ain't taking no statues down around here, Junior. That's the answer.
Right, exactly.
That's it. It's like, was he a racist? Probably, and the answer is still no. That's it.
Yeah. It's a kind of Philistinism as well about it's a Philistinism about history and about monuments and and symbolism and culture. It presumes that all edifice. It reveals their view of culture, which is essentially just propaganda, an arm of propaganda.
Yes.
That every statue has to reflect their view on the world. Whereas there's like when I walked around Westminster Abbey once, I felt very uncomfortable. There's fucking the Hammer of the Scots is commemorated in that fucking. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like there was like a genuine primal, like, whoa, this guy was like a celebrated murderer of my people. But that doesn't. But there's a complexity and a nuance in there. I can still admire the many poets that are celebrated there. I can still admire certain kings of England. It doesn't, like, I don't need the culture to reflect my view as some kind. Culture is not propaganda. It's a complex ecosystem.
Correct.
Do you know what I mean? It just like this idea that it has to be this morally, it just isn't the way it's a complete lack of understanding of culture. You know,
that's correct.
If there's like a racist epithet in one Shakespeare play, does that mean that all of Shakespeare is now gone?
Right.
I mean,
that's the problem.
Small-minded behavior.
That's right.
And like I say, I think you're right that the answer is no, that's not how we play this game. That's not how we do this. You want to talk about Edward Colston, the slave owner, slave ships? Let's have that discussion.
Right.
You know? And it got into this argument when it was happening with the Robert E. Lee statues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Argument. And I took the point, you know, like that some people might walk around and there was a propagandist element that I didn't know about in the early 20s, apparently, where there was that kind of like certain parts of the South, the negative parts of the South were trying to propagandize themselves out of being on the defensive about the Civil War and all that. And I sort of got that, but that doesn't mean that those cunts going in there and just ripping it down and agitating were right. It doesn't. You know?
And exactly. And I think one thing, it was really when I have to say, for me, one of the paths out of this, because again, I used to, having been on the progressive left, I used to think like this, and I had a real struggle because being a technology guy, you know, I knew that it wasn't good enough to just, I couldn't just do what a lot of these people do and just say, well, I don't like Western technology. I don't like whatever, which really means I'm just going to use it all as a consumer. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to understand it. No, because I knew, like, I wanted to be a software developer. I wanted to be in this industry, and I start to find useful work in this industry. And it's like, but I had to. And I had also my I guess my background, my heritage as a geek, as a geeky kid, as a math and science kid growing up, you know, and someone who liked knowing things. It's like, if you're interested in certain aspects of science, you got to go talk to some dead white guys. That's just how it is. I don't know what to tell you, you know, and it's like, you know, it took me, it was really, again, Stanley Crouch. I gotta give him the credit, man, because he's the guy who kind of just broke me out of that whole dead end spiral, because it really is a dead end. It's just, it's dead. It's cold. It's sterile. It's life negating, you know. And the moment you say, you know something, this person from history, I'm gonna take everything from him that he has to give me. You know, and it's like, and whatever he has that is not fit, you know, whatever he has that's kind of small-minded and racist and whatever, then I'm gonna leave that right where it is. But I'll take everything he has to teach me. I'm gonna learn it. You know?
Which is exactly what culture is.
That's right. That's right.
It's biological. It's evolutionary. You know, it's. You know, it's like take, you know, eliminate what doesn't work and preserve what does. It's just, you know, it just, yeah. I mean, the fact that there's no conversation, the fact that it, I don't know. Yeah. But this is this is a weapon. So they saw their moment.
Yeah.
And so they start going after Robert the Bruce and think that was a laughable moment in a way for me, because I saw that, and they went after the real laughable moment. I shared it on Twitter was when they went after the Penny Lane in Liverpool sign, you know, the Beatles song, and I just thought, now you're just going for landmarks. Now I know your fucking game.
Right.
Now you're just. presumably it had the name Penny Lane originally was built by who cared, like half of the
Oh, you
fucking
gotta
cities
be kidding me. Okay, so what? That it was built by slaves, so you're gonna take the street sign down?
Yeah, I mean it was exactly what you said earlier, like where they're just going for it's a tactic where they're trying to weaken, unmoor this culture from itself.
Yeah.
And that was just one way, and in a way that they revealed their hand, just like you were saying, that they will overplay their hand in a sense, like, and at that moment I kind of stopped being slightly panicky. I just laughed. I thought, that's just that's like schoolboy tactics, mate. Like, don't you think we're all dumb?
Right.
Do you think we're that dumb that we're all going to capitulate to you scrubbing out Penny Lane?
Penny Lane, come on now.
Can you scrub out a fucking Beatles song? No, you can't. So piss off, you know.
Exactly. No, I mean, for real, man. This is why I get back to that thing of this is a crisis, but it's not the end of the world. The West is not on fire. No, America is not burning. No, even you could say Seattle isn't even burning, right? It's like we have a problem. We have these localized outbreaks, and we can say, oh, is it localized? Okay, are they coordinated? Yes, probably. Is there money being pumped into these organizations? Probably, because they seem suspiciously well resourced. You know what I'm saying? For a bunch of crusties. That's
right, exactly.
Right. So all that is true, but again, how weak? I mean, fundamentally, man, their shit is weak.
Absolutely.
I mean,
that's all they've got. It's actually, it's very alarming at first.
Right.
But it's obviously just social media tactics. That's all they've got. They go for the icons, go for landmarks. There's no substance behind it once you get beyond that. If that's all they've got, then
that's all they've got. It's one thing. It's alarming because it's highly kinetic. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And this is, by the way, another side effect. The panic we see is, I'm going to get weird now, but I think this is a side effect of the sissification, the broad sissification of American culture and possibly UK culture as well. That is to say, we have generations of people who don't know what it means to actually be in a fight, who've never seen a fight.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if you know how I began to twig to this, because check this out. I'd be looking at some website. A lot of times it would be a UK website, and I was like, "Man, y'all have got it even worse over there, right?" And they'd be like, I'd be this video, right? There'd be a video link, and like the preview, the still with the play button on it, and it would say like, "This video contains disturbing scenes," and it's like you'd play it, and it's like someone's getting slapped in the face, like it's like, whoa, is that the disturbing scene? Like, because this motherfucker just got slapped in the face. What's the problem?
Like, that's my childhood, mate.
It's like, Mom, what are you doing here? Like,
exactly.
Right. It's like, someone get his ass kicked. It's like, oh, this is disturbing. No, he just got his ass kicked. That's all. Now you can see like, okay, someone getting stabbed or someone getting, burned or whatever. That's different. But I find like they're putting that tag on all types of very basic ass whipping type videos where it's not really necessary. So there's a sissification going on there that has gone on, right? And the result is that when you see people coming out in the street and like doing all this crazy shit, you're like, oh my God, look at this. But then you look closely and say, well, hang a second, these guys are punks. Like they're not really, most of them can't even fight. It's just that like there's 10 of them and they're attacking one person.
A good example of exactly what you're talking about. And I did get alarmed initially, but the more I watched it, did you see that there was 2 police officers, 1 black woman and 1 white guy, and the guy got attacked in the street. It was somewhere in Hackney, and it was videoed. And it looked quite alarming the first time you see it, because the guy, they're really going for the guy, right? And the woman's like, she's like doing she actually does really well. She's holding back like her body language, not to instigate, but to protect the guy as well. So she played it quite well. But the first time you see it, it's alarming. But then I looked around and they were a bunch of sissies, really. They were schemies, and like, I wouldn't have liked to have been on the arse end of what they were dishing
Sure.
out, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like, there was like 5 or 6 of them. The guy who was on top of the copper was quite dangerous, and
Right.
another guy came with a baseball bat, but they didn't do anything. It was all fronting, you know what I
Right.
mean? It was,
Right.
they were kicking here, they were kicking there. It could have been, if they were really as dangerous as they were projecting they were,
Right.
there would have been a different outcome.
Well, that's right. That's right. Exactly.
And so that's indicative of what you're saying, I think.
Well, that's correct. I mean, and look, you know, what once you soaked up your share of ass whippings, as I have, you realize that actually, hang on a second. You know, being on the ground and being kicked by someone who's wearing sneakers is one thing.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, actually, unless you're getting kicked very hard in the head, you can probably maintain. You know what I'm saying? You're not being on the ground and being beaten with a baseball bat. That's something else, you know?
Right.
But it's, in other words, the reflexive kind of, the horror of someone being struck by another human being, right?
Yeah.
Is a product of the sissification of our society. That's my point. Is that so, you know, if you hit someone with a certain kind of weapon, yes, that is horrifying. But come on, man, some dude who doesn't even know how to throw a punch, you know what I'm saying, and doesn't know how to plant his feet. You know what I'm saying? And just comes in and kind of like jumps and does some, it's almost like a ballet move. It's like, really, your power comes from the fact that you do these mass attacks where it's like 10 of you against one guy, you know, or 5 of you against one guy. But it's like, the moment these guys were faced by some committed, determined force of people who were not having it, it'd be a whole different story.
Yeah, and that's what happened. You know, once the riot police came out, they just, you know, it was all fronting, you know. But that actually, what you said there, like about the kinetic nature of that and how it relates to that, the sissification is like the fuse.
Yes.
It just gets lit because it's ready to burn at any little flicker.
Right.
We're living in that, as that's really what's going on, regardless of whether it's coronavirus or riots.
That's right.
Doesn't actually matter.
Mm-hmm.
If or it does, but if you just take away whatever the flame is,
mm-hmm.
issues, what you're talking about, that we're such a powder keg because we're all a bunch of sissies as a culture now.
Exactly. So we're all ready to just explode into tears or panic or whatever the moment something happens. It's like, oh, look, there's a disease and you could die. I'm like, excuse me? It turns out that in fact, as a baseline fact of the world across time, there is a disease and you could die. Right? It's like that's kind of a basic, you know, fact about the world. Okay, so calm down. What's the matter with you? You know, and it's the same thing with this. Oh, there are people who in the street who might kick your ass. Yes, as it turns out, having grown up as a nerdy kid who had to learn how to fight at some point so that your life wouldn't be a complete misery, I'm aware that there are people in the street who will try to kick your ass. Yes, this does indeed happen. Yes. Right.
I actually had to go through that journey a little bit last week because I had the same experience as a kid where I had some experience on a scheme, we would call it over here, and I was always I was the little weird different kid, and then they would come after you.
Yeah, so you know, scheme over there, housing project over here, same thing. Go on, yes.
Yeah, and so I would be like I had that face. They would used to be like, you know, the message would get round that such and such was after you, which is mean you were going to get your ass kicked. So and actually last week I just thought, because it wasn't where it's like, fuck, I'm going to be a target here. But I like, this feels familiar. It's like, this is what it felt like when I was 7. Like, walking around the scheme and just being like, you know, am I a target now? Like, it was exactly the same feeling. So I had to go through that whole journey of just kind of like, well, you know, it's not like I haven't felt it before. And as you say, it's a perfectly natural position to be in, maybe it's good for you to kind of experience it.
Listen, there's a reason why I think I think you know, this guy Gavin McInnes, I don't know if you heard of him, and he, you know, founded this thing called the Proud Boys, and you know, it was very much like a kind of a Proud Boy thing to go and, you know, it would have been a Proud Boy thing to go and protect these monuments, you know, if the Proud Boys had been based in the UK, right? to go
Yeah.
and say, yeah, we're not going to have any of this. So, it's basically this masculine tribe is what it is. What he says is that one of the things you have to have done in your life to be a real man is to have kicked someone's ass and to have gotten your ass kicked.
Right.
and I just think that's so interesting because, I mean, I think he's not wrong. It's like you gotta, there's something about having to have scrapped a little bit. Doesn't mean you have to have done something extremely dangerous. Doesn't mean you have to have been running around with guns and knives and whatnot. But it does mean that, like, there's something about if that is, I mean, men are supposed to be disposable. We are the disposable gender.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that part of the test of manhood is, well, are you ready to dispose of yourself?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's not a bad thing to ask, because look, it's certainly the case that as a father, and becoming a father, it's like, well, then that's when you really become a man, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you really understand that, like, that you're ready, or you should understand that you're ready to die at a moment's notice, right now. You know what I'm saying? And there's a kind of a, for me, I know that there was a kind of a joy in that. There was a kind of when I think about it, I would almost get emotional, because it's like the idea of, like, yeah, it's like if I'm called upon to die for my child, it's like, yeah, man. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. In a second. You know what I'm saying? And because not now, a tribe of people like that who understand that, a tribe full of men who get that, who are in that frame of mind, who are like, I'm going to kiss, there's something happening, whatever, they're coming, they're doing something downtown, I'm going to kiss my family goodbye, and it might be my last kiss. So, listen to your mother and nothing. And it's like, I am, and to feel that joy of, I am going to die for my family tonight.
Yeah.
And to love that feeling. Like, do you really want to fuck with a tribe of people who think like that? Is that what you, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But motherfucker, you better be ready to go all the way. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I feel very much like that. Like, no, because you're burning shit down, you're looting your weapon. Like, someone's gonna get caught up in the midst, And it's like, no, if it comes down to it, yeah, like you're going to have to kill me.
Yeah, actually, I think that when I think about it, like, there was an element of that with those guys at the weekend. They obviously had just decided that they could be in trouble here, but they were making a statement, weren't they? They were just saying, well, yeah, we will fucking clash with you and you'll fucking do what you have to do, but we're here and we're just letting you know. We're not letting it happen without a fight. We're a bunch of fucking thugs as well,
Let's do this. Yeah.
Just let you put me in jail if you want. That's what we do.
Right. No, but and listen, that is, sometimes that's necessary, because look, the police have dropped the ball.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then in my country as well, it's like, well, the police are dropping the ball. I don't understand this. I don't understand. In my city, you had a mayor who 5 seconds ago was talking about how he was going to arrest people at a Jewish funeral because they were standing too close together and disobeying social distancing laws and what have you.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
Right? And now you're going to do what? Now you're going to let them do what? And go to downtown Brooklyn and do what? No. No. Be as adamant about this shit as you were about that shit. And same thing in your country. It's like, what y'all were stringing tape across park benches 5 seconds ago. Ugh. Y'all were talking about, what did you buy at the groceries? Or was this essential? Hang on. Didn't you just go for a run a couple hours ago? How come you're out here now running again? Hey, listen, we see you walking across the desolate moor in the Midlands, Yeah. What's going on over there, right? And so how come you can't come and protect the country's monuments? What's the matter with you?
Yeah, this what's going on here, and you used a couple of weeks ago when we were talking, you used it was like a hack. Their tactics are like hacks, and one of the key hack, and I've been listening to Shelby Steele talking about this, and he's brilliant. He said white guilt is now a weapon. it's now a weapon. And I think what it does in this situation is it's just scrambled people's brains so that they can't act. It's a hack. It's being used as a hack, as a way of hacking people's minds, because the cognitive dissonance here is just so glaring and obnoxious that it's so frustrating to watch people like paint themselves into a corner trying to explain away, like you say, how they can have drone checks on the fucking moors and 400 cops policing people at Hyde Park who were just having picnics, and then suddenly just hanging back while someone was trying to burn down the most important war memorial in our country. Like,
right.
The white guilt thing is being played for everything it's worth.
For everything it's worth.
It's a completely empty thing now. It's an empty weapon. It doesn't have that's what Shelby Steele's point is. It doesn't have the moral content it did in 1960. It just doesn't. But it's being used as leverage, and it's as a hack. It's a mind hack. It's a way of scrambling the nervous system of people who would otherwise see sense.
That's right.
And
Well, that's right, and it's taken advantage of that. That's a very good analogy, and it is taking advantage of that, of a Well, here's what's funny, right? So in the security, in the information security world, so-called cybersecurity, one thing you learn right away is that it's always an arms race, right? So that the virus writers and the writers of exploits and the writers of these automated pieces of software that will go and automatically try to scan an operating system and see what its weaknesses are. They're always improving their equipment, right? They're improving their software and finding new ways to break into systems, to compromise systems. And so systems get updated. Your operating system gets updated. One reason why it's good to keep up with operating system updates is precisely so that as vulnerabilities appear, they get patched. Okay. So they found something, last October, they found something where you can break into a Windows machine, whatever, and then Microsoft updated Windows. You need to apply those updates so that you keep, okay, now this hack that you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
When was this hack developed? This is an old hack, right?
It's really old.
Right. And we are, as a society, our operating system is still tuned to, again, the thing I'm always going on, but this Cold War type of political operating system.
Yes, that is absolutely the right way to put it.
Right.
Yep.
So because we haven't gone through and applied all those updates and flushed all that legacy code out of the system, we're vulnerable on this front. And by the way, not just, it's not just well-meaning liberals who are vulnerable, but again, conservatives are vulnerable because Black Lives Matter says, well, Black Lives Matter, and that's why I'm burning McDonald's. And then you want to you want to oppose black. It's like, well, Black lives do matter. So what do I? It's like no. Yeah. Like stop trying to oppose. Just be like, hey, you're not burning anything.
Yeah.
It's like you're not gonna burn nothing around here. That's it. Well, listen, listen. I've seen. Where else I've seen this? By the way, I've seen this in the trans activism sphere, right? Because they'll make these specious, I want to say arguments, but say argument is kind of giving it too much credit. But you know what I mean? They'll make these assertions, and it's like, well, children are they're going to kill themselves, or trans people are killing themselves, and that's why we have to change the language. And, no one, like people with sense, should be, if their reflexes hadn't been ruined by the Cold War, what they would say is, listen, please don't kill yourself, but the answer is no. Yeah. If you kill yourself, that's regrettable, but the answer is still no. Yes. It's like, instead, listen, I like as much as I would like to, if it were in my power to protect you from this, I would. But the kind of protection you seek is not available to you. That is, I am not going to change the English language so that you don't kill yourself. The answer is no. And you don't have to oppose anything. I don't have to, well, this is about hate. Well, if you want to say it's about, it's like, I don't hate anyone. Now you're in the trap. Well, I don't hate. Well, yes, because what you said is hateful. Now we're in a discussion about whether what I said is hateful. No. Like,
Right.
listen, no.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I respect you as a human being enough to tell you when I think you're full of shit. That's as much as you get. Okay. I think you're my equal. And therefore, because you're my equal, I can tell you that I think you're full of shit. Because you're my equal, I can tell you no. And the answer is no. And that's it.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that was the kind of Jordan Peterson, Camille Paglia line on that. And Paglia, well, in a speech that was on YouTube where she said, yeah, we just don't do that with the language. We just, like you say, we just don't do that with the language. It's separate from every claim you're making, you know, but here are examples of where the language has been changed over time by real progressives.
Right.
Yeah, right. You know, so yeah, no, I agree. But this is we're getting down to it, I think, because what you say about this legacy code, the Cold War legacy code, and actually Coleman Hughes made a similar statement on a podcast, the Trigonometry podcast recently, where he said the symbols of the civil rights era are so embedded in the American psyche that it's so easy to stimulate that kind of semiotic language, or whatever you want to call it, that's in the consciousness, and everything gets interpreted. So it's a similar kind of thing. The code is, how do we then, I think this is a complex problem. Or I don't know, tell me if you think it is. Is it a hard problem, or is it just a difficult problem? Or I can't remember the distinction you make.
Wicked, hard versus wicked, yeah.
Yeah, is it a wicked problem, or is it just a difficult one to really to get the next upgrade on the operating system that's long overdue?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, here's the thing. I think it's not necessarily a wicked problem, interestingly enough. I think that's a great question. Yeah, I think it's difficult, but not wicked. And the reason I don't think it's wicked is because we're not even, well, one, because we know that what we have to, like, the thing we're called upon to do is simply lose a bad habit. That's really it, right? So there's not a kind of a, we're not required to construct anything new. We're not even required to construct any new arguments. We're just required to stop doing something that we have done reflexively, right?
You're right, because what you said about the canon, what we say about the culture, what we say about Churchill, those things stand already. Yeah. Those structural truths about the culture stand.
That's right. So it's like, our thing is, stop saying, stop just assuming, I guess stop indulging this oppositional reflex, because again, that analogy really sticks with me. I mean, visually, that was when I was arguing with someone, and I just got it this came in my head all of a sudden, of these two pieces of wood leaning against each other in like this inverted V, and like they're both lopsided. Either of them would fall over if you remove the other one. They only stand because they're leaning against each other, and so they're both lopsided. Both of you, this notion of socialism, this utopia, this thing of like there's no class and there's no anything and everyone's equal, and that is just so fishy and unworkable. I mean, 5 seconds with that, you're just like, you're done. Okay, that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, this idea of just allowing the market to be your God, this idea of people just, and I'm not talking, of course, about ordinary business people kind of building successful businesses and going out there and fighting in the arena of the marketplace and making profit and doing, that's wonderful. I'm talking about this thing of these guys who get so fat and they get dug into the economy like ticks. They just start sucking up resources just because they are who they are and where they are, Yeah. And there's some fat oligarch, sitting on top of his pile of pelf, just snuffling up the profits and just saying, it's a free market, it's good. It's like,
but this is actually a really important point, because it's exactly why a lot of the lefties have been allowed to run free, because the people on the right have not owned up to the fact that since Reaganism and Thatcherism, we didn't turn around and go, actually, you can be fiscally conservative without being like just, Gordon Gekko.
Correct. Correct. Right. Exactly. And there's a million things. And my dad pointed this out to me. We're having a conversation about this same thing. Because, again, my dad, he's a union guy, lifelong carpenter, believes in hard work and no excuses. And he, he had Milton Friedman on his reading table when I was a kid, right? Free to choose. So what he said was that, we don't say this about any other kind of design, of engineering design. That is, we don't say, oh, we invented a certain kind of light bulb, and that's the best light bulb ever that will ever be.
Right.
And so let's leave it alone. We never say that. We didn't say that about the internal combustion. Listen, the internal combustion engine is awesome. Me especially, because I'm a big carbon motherfucker. I'm like, yeah. It's like gasoline, diesel, all right. Rich, energy dense, refined hydrocarbons. Yeah. But, it's just true that we didn't get to a certain point with the internal combustion engine and then say, this is the best engine that will ever be. So enough already.
That's true. You can't be ideological about technology or engineering.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that capitalism is a kind of technology.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a design pattern. Okay. So how you implement that design, you can improve it. Of course you can. Now you have to do it slowly. You have to, because now you're talking about a whole economy is based on this, right? So, you don't want to just like upend the whole thing and see what happens. That's just irresponsible. But the idea that you can't say, well, how about if we change this thing here,
Yeah.
Oh, and that makes sense. Oh, that seemed to work. Okay, what about if we do this here? Of course you can. But again, the problem is that we had all these ideologues who were just like, well, if the Soviet Union gets a beachhead, it's all over. So capitalism, and you get dug. And look, that's human nature in a way. You've been in arguments, right, where it's like the other person gets dug in, so goddamn, you got to dig in.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying it's done now, or come on, it's like there's so many interesting experiments we could be doing, small scale experiments. There's so many interesting ways to think about how to marshal human energy. I mean, also because the same thing I was telling Mark I told you that back when the Foundationist Society was really born in Occupy Wall Street, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things I got very, I kind of got very not agitated, but I just argued vehemently with people in Zuccotti Park about was that all these people trying to tell me about Karl Marx, right? And I was just like, look, it's like, okay, can you think of a piece of property that it's possible for you to possess? And then I take it from you and I use it and I have it and I go on about my business with it, but you still possess it. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't think of anything. They could not think. I was like, no, this is not a trick question. It's serious. There's a real thing and it's real property and people really pay money for it. It can be very valuable. Can you think of anything like that? It's like, no. I said, software.
Right.
Right? Now, so much of what Marx had to say, and I'm not saying Marx was wrong about in his descriptive. I mean, I have come to learn that Marx was pretty good about describing how the economy of the time worked. His prescriptions were shit, but he was good at describing. Okay. So I'm not even taking anything away from Marx necessarily. I'm just saying that how can you, in the age of software, in the age when all of you people actually have personal computers because you have computers on your person. In the age when the average young person is actually aware of owning software and using software, why are you still talking in these terms as if the only thing that can be owned is a thing that can be physically touched? The world runs on this invisible asset.
Yeah.
Okay? That means something. Now, I'm not saying that none of economics works anymore. You got to take that into account.
Yeah, and it, at the very, very least, it brings a lot more complexity to the bourgeois working class relationship, if you want.
Yes, exactly right.
class, the employed class, that whole software revolution, the whole personal computer revolution has, at the very least, I mean, you could argue it destroyed it in a way, and made it outdated, but at the very least, it's made it so complex that you really have to look for that model.
Well, that's right. Because look, man, if the whole thing is the worker has to own the means of production, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am a software developer, and I own my own laptop.
Right.
So we're there already.
Right.
At least in that specific. You see what I'm saying? So
yeah, and the people who invented it, who are the kind of quote unquote bourgeois, there's rather than it being an exploitative relationship, there is a symbiotic ecological relationship now between those two classes. It's not perfect, but it's way more complex.
It's way more, and that's all exactly. That's what you said is exactly. That's all I'm trying to get people to see is that, listen, you've got to break out of these old models because some of this shit doesn't make sense anymore. And the same thing on the other side. It's like, listen, you say, oh, capitalism, and okay, wonderful. Listen, can you think of a model, of an economic model in which people create things of real and lasting value and then give them away? And again, the right wingers have nothing to say about it. They don't know. I'm like, no, it's not a trick question. It's real. It's like they have no idea. Yeah, the open source software movement.
Right.
That's literally what it was. And not just that, but all your modern economic shit runs on top of it.
Yeah.
This is what, like, come on. Why are you still in this old ass model and you haven't updated your thinking yet? Come on. The internet runs on free software. Most of the computers connected to the internet that run the actual network run some variation of a free operating system that itself is a descendant of an operating system that was designed and built at AT&T.
Yeah.
And AT&T had to give it away because they were under antitrust rules. AT&T wasn't allowed to be in the operating system business because they already had a telecom monopoly. So they built this thing and they ended up giving it away. Now, that means something. Come on. Yes. It's like, so what I'm saying is all these design patterns that, we're talking about these design patterns that were kind of like trapped in amber, right? Yeah. During the Cold War, right? Because goddamn it, we couldn't give an inch because those Soviets were da-da-da-da-da. Okay, it's okay already. It's done. Yes. Now we're living in this world where look, the computer, by the way, speaking of the Cold War, the computer network, okay, that the scientists went into a bunker to design, okay, is no longer that original design. That originally a bunch of American computer scientists and American engineers went into a bunker to figure out how to build a computer network that could survive a nuclear war. Right. And that turned into the internet.
Right.
The way the internet handles traffic and the way that it routes packets around, that is all that stuff is descended from the original design. It's like, we need a network that can, if 3 of our favorite cities have been destroyed, we can still route traffic around this network. That was the conceptual motivation for that. Okay. Right. And look at what it's turned into. It's turned into this thing where you can run your business on it. You can auction off half of the junk in your basement. You can, you can get your whatever. You can do this. Okay. So it is sufficiently more complex now that it's time to get over all that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that what we're experiencing in a way is a retreat into completely archaic models because of a terror at the complexity of what we're confronting, but perhaps this terror, listening to you speak about this actually, and over the last few weeks, and what you said online you said something online that really woke me up a little bit about, it's now, you're now no longer can just say, I'm not a technological person, and I use that excuse all the time. And the way and it made me think of the way I feel about like poetry and culture. It's not an excuse to not know your history, to know your literature, to know your canon. And in the same way, I thought maybe I need that wake up moment as well. There's no excuse for being a technology philistine now. And this is part of the problem, is that we're so dependent on these complex systems that we know nothing about, or that we're willfully ignorant about. So there's this kind of idiotic retreat into old Cold War models, and the part of maybe this is the way forward for an upgrade, is that we find we offer a system of interpreting the world which recognizes people's pain, and because I think there's a particular kind of pain that comes with living in a technological world.
Yes, there is. Yes, there
and
is.
so you, for every gain, you give something up. So we recognize where the real origins of that pain and anxiety and anxiety, angst.
Yes, that's right.
Is coming from, but we bring in the culture, we bring in the canon into that. It's, to say fusion is too crude, but like we harness the canon, we harness the culture into that angst, rather than retreating into these like really, I mean, it's embarrassing in a way what's going on right now.
Yes.
It's actually embarrassing, this retreat into these ridiculously outdated, almost fetishist, not almost, it's a fetish.
Yes.
It's a fetishized ideology fuckfest that we're in the middle of right now. It's just like, it's embarrassing.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. No, that's beautifully said. And that's dead right. It reminds me of something I was saying to somebody a little while ago, that like we have to, it's like because every age is a captive to its reigning metaphors. Mm-hmm. The reigning metaphors, every age is in prison to a certain extent. We're in a metaphorical prison, and
yes.
When we have that doubly, because we're captive to the metaphors of this age, but we never even shed the metaphors of the Cold War age, right? So we're in a prison. We're in a prison within a prison, right?
Yeah, and so we're woefully unable to meet the true complexities and angst-causing challenges of our moment.
Correct. And the first thing to pick that lock is we have to develop new literacy. Well, that's what picking a lock is, right? I mean, it is a kind of illiteracy. It's kind of right? Because I've of course, hanging out with geeks, being a geek myself, eventually you learn about lock picking, and you learn about what's inside a lock, right? Now, it doesn't make it trivially easy to pick any lock. You have to practice, and there's a certain amount of whatever. But the fact is, once like my life changed when I understood what a lock, like what was inside a lock,
Mm-hmm.
Because now it's just, I had a mental model of it. And so I was like, oh, that's what's going on. So even like if even with my regular key, when I go to open the door of my house and like the key sticks a little bit, because I have that mental model of what's happening inside, I know, oh, right, jiggle it this way, and and it really is kind of a game changer to learn how things like that work inside. It's the same thing with knowing how a car works. Like, it's not to say everyone has to be an auto mechanic. Not everyone's going to be an auto mechanic. But once you understand the basic systems of how a car works, then you can use basic logic and basic reasoning, okay, to kind of figure, okay, well, if this is happening, then it's probably this kind of problem.
Yeah.
If you understand that, like, your car has a gasoline engine, but that engine is started by an electrical motor, right? Yeah. Then if that electrical motor isn't even turning, then it's probably an electrical problem. You see what I'm saying? So in the same way, like we have to build new literacies in order to get out of the prison we're in, because that's going to give us a mental model of the thing. And then now we're outside. Essentially, the moment you have a mental model of something, you're really all the way you're outside. It's yours, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, that's...
No, I think that's exactly right. And I mean, I actually have a question about, because since you put that tweet out, basically I've been trying to think, well, what can I do as someone who is not going to be, as you say, a car mechanic in this world? I'm not going to be a computer guy. I think it would be an enormous number of steps towards less anxiety if I had that knowledge of the key that you're talking about in terms of just. So I think one of the problems that's going on in our culture is a sense of powerlessness in the face of technology that we can't live without.
Yes.
And it's a very primal when it comes to like things like it's like I don't know if you have ever read Cal Newport, like his stuff on digital minimalism, and he's an ex-MIT computer guy. Not ex, I mean he was graduated, and I think you'd like him.
Okay,
if
cool.
you haven't read him before, and he's written a book called Digital Minimalism, and he says, as a computer guy, I'm very worried about certain technologies that are out there and what effect they're having on our brains.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's a big part of what's going on, is that we're addicted to something we know we need. So we're in this kind of constant cognitive dissonance that's wrenching us inside.
Yes.
As a culture. So I think that this literacy you're talking about is possibly the key.
Yes.
To living with this necessary technology, which was kind of, when you were talking about the open source thing, that was kind of the atmosphere in the late 90s, early 2000s of this stuff. Correct. I remember when people would tell me about this and I didn't know what it was, but when Napster first came out, and there was a kind of breath of fresh air feeling. It didn't feel like it was consuming my soul.
Correct. Yeah. Because again, it was much more of, well, it was much more of an open air market. It was that kind of ecosystem. And you think about what happens to your soul when you go to a vibrant open air market. Yeah.
But there's a difference between the open air market and then going into like a supermarket where there's propaganda everywhere and you're being assaulted by advertising, and it's all designed where you're meant to go, and I
was just going to use the analogy of an open air market versus some kind of Soviet brutalist piece of architecture. Right, exactly.
But that's effectively what our cities are.
Yes.
They're just much more gilded versions of that exact way of thinking about how our environment should look. It's not. We're not far removed from that leftist thinking.
Well, yeah, and look, and going directly to your point about software, it's like that's what the online environment has become like for if you use the large services, if you use Twitter and Facebook to a certain extent, it's worse. Because there's this illusion of everything being free form and everything being kind of easygoing and what have you, and there being a lot of experimentation.
Actually, Cal Newport talks exactly about that kind of cheery, don't worry, it's just whatever you want it to be.
Right.
It's something that's like mowing your insides for all of your information.
Well, that's right, because what it's doing, well, and again, we can take that Soviet analogy right to the wall, because in addition to you being relatively constrained in terms of what you can do, and facing increasing constraints on what you can say and what have you, it's also the case that no matter how much or how little one of these big platforms has gone in on censorship, the fact is that underneath, if it's a free service, all of them are watching you. All of them are the Stasi.
Right. Yes.
All of them, because that's the only way they can make money. If it's a quote unquote free service, they're watching everything you do and they are informing on you. That's a Soviet structure that Stalin himself would have envied, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now you were asking about what kinds of things.
Yeah. So my question would be like, what would be the conversational French version of like coding or something like that, or which would give me that kind of like knowledge of whether it's the electric engine or what, just that kind of map